Books, books. I like books. I'm gonna read them all.
Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my channel where I review fantasy, Stephen King, all sorts of books, and today I'm doing a double book review. I tried really hard to find two books that I thought would go well together for this review, and I failed. So the two books that I have picked out, the only thing they have in common is that they are Owl Crate Book Box books, and that is Ballad and Dagger and Starling House. Yes, one is a YA fantasy, one is an adult fantasy. I will have chapter times in the description box below if you're more interested in one or the other. So let's jump right in. I'm going to talk about Ballad and Dagger first, but before I do that, depending on when I post this video, I don't know how many days there are left, but there is, I am hosting a giveaway on my channel. The deadline is coming up on March 31st. Yep, Sunday, 2024. So if you haven't checked out that giveaway in that video, please go and find it on my channel. All right, so let's talk about Ballad and Dagger. Now, some of you may remember that this book was a replacement book because the Owl Crate Book Box book I had originally picked out to read in, I think this was February, which was Witches Steeped in Gold. I ended up DNFing that book and replaced it with Ballad and Dagger. And I would describe this book as basically a Latin American Percy Jackson. Why do I say that? Well, first of all, this book was put out by Hyperion, which is the same company that does Percy Jackson. And you can see Rick Riordan's logo there on the book. So I don't know exactly how involved Rick Riordan was in this book, but he clearly influenced it in a number of ways. So the premise of the story is that we have a young boy named Mateo. And Mateo originally came from this magical island called San Madrigal. San Madrigal was this magical island that had these three distinct points, and each mountain point was kind of ruled by a different group on the island. So there was there's a pirate meeting house, there's a Harrow temple, there's also a big Jewish community. I'm not quite sure how all those things go together, but that's how it is in the book. Now, the island mysteriously sunk beneath the water, so everyone that lived in San Madrigal has now relocated to New York. And there's very much a feeling in this community that, they don't really belong there. They're just living there because they have to, because they can no longer live in their home and where they come from. So I thought, the whole coming to this story from that immigrant perspective was a really interesting way to look at things. So Mateo is this music prodigy. He plays the piano, and he's kind of been around the world honing his skills, but he's finally back at home, and he witnesses this murder by a classmate of his, this girl, Chella. And basically he gets pulled into this plot, and there's all these political machinations where all of these different groups, the pirate group and the Santero group and the Jewish community, they all have different goals. They're all trying to bring the island back. Oh, and there's also these gods. Again, this is where the Percy Jackson reference comes in. So all of these things where we have a young boy who feels out of place, just like Percy. There's gods, and they're all based on, again, Latin American type folklore, just like Percy Jackson is based on Greek mythology. So a lot of that stuff is very similar. There's other characters who are allegedly descendant of gods, again, very much like Percy Jackson. So when I first started reading this book, I was very interested. I thought this was a great new take on an old story, basically. I was really feeling Mateo because he also struggles with being very shy and very introverted, and he has to kind of come out of his shell. But I have to say, unfortunately, as the story went along, it did lose me a little bit. It did lose me. And one of the things was, I did not understand how all of these different groups work together. So, like I mentioned, Chella, her family, her father is a rabbi, and there's this like very deep rooted Jewish heritage in their community. And I didn't really see how that fit with like the pirates and the pirate community and some of the other stuff. I don't know. And maybe it's just because I'm not a member of this community. So maybe someone that is would understand that a little bit more. I know I've said this about another book recently. I don't remember what it was, but basically we have another situation here where I think this book might be really great for a certain community. If you are someone from the Latin American community or someone struggling with that feeling of not belonging because you're not in your homeland, like all those type of things, I could see how that might be really meaningful for some readers and can really connect with people. Unfortunately, it didn't connect with me. So I don't want to say I don't want to say that anything, I don't want to say anything negative about the book. I'll just say that I just don't think it was for me personally. And again, like I've said a million times, that is okay. Not every book has to be for me. I mean, it would be cool if it was, but I'm just kidding. Like, that would be boring. So not every book has to be for me. I don't think this book is for me. I'm not going to be continuing with the series. Yes, obviously, I read the whole thing, so I liked it better than Witches Steeped in Gold. But yeah, at the end of the day, it wasn't my favorite read of that month. So now let's talk about Starling House by Alix E. Harrow. This is the first book that I've read by this author, and I really like this one. I really like this book for a number of reasons, but let me just give you the quick setup. So this book is described as being like a gothic haunted house type story, and I feel like that's not an accurate description. Like, it definitely has gothic vibes and haunted house vibes, but there's just so much more going on here. So basically the story centers around this younger girl named Opal. Now, Opal lives with her younger brother, Jasper, I believe his name is, and they live in like a motel because their parents died. Well, they never really knew who their father was, but they were raised by a mother who was very, let's say, flighty or frivolous. She was very flighty and frivolous with her love, frivolous for her body. She drank, she did drugs, she hooked up with guys, and then one night she was driving down the road, ended up driving into the river. Opal was in the car. Opal manages to escape. Her mother did not. So Opal and her brother have been on their own. And because they're so young, Opal is scrimping and scraping, working jobs, stealing, like doing anything she can for her younger brother. Because A, he has asthma and his medication is very expensive. And two, she's really trying to like give him a chance for a better life. She's trying to save up money so that he can go to school and get out of this town. Because why is this town so bad? Well, this is one of those towns that's like basically run by this family, this very powerful family known as the Graveleys. And the Graveleys own a lot of land in this town, and they own this huge power plant. And like basically everyone in town grows up and goes to work at the power plant. And like many stereotypical power plants, like everyone's miserable there. People get sick from working there. Like, it's not a great situation. So she's doing whatever she can to get her brother out of that. Now, on top of that, Opal is having these dreams about a mysterious house in the town called Starling House. Now, everyone knows that Starling House exists, but no one's ever actually seen it because it's behind a gate, right? The driveway is gated and it's far back in the woods. So everyone knows that it's there, but no one's ever seen it. No one comes in or out, and there's a ton of like local lore about this house, right? There's a woman that used to live there that was married to one of the Graveleys. She may or may not have killed her husband. She disappeared, but she's also famous for publishing a children's book that's filled with monsters. So Opal's having dreams about this mysterious Starling House. And one day she happens to walk by the house and she stops because she's like, oh my God, like I'm dreaming about this house. I'm feeling some sort of pull. And she meets a young man at the gate. and that's when we meet Arthur. So of course Arthur's like, hey, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, I don't know, I'm interested in your house. Long story short, Arthur ends up offering Opal a job. He said, hey, I will pay you an exorbitant amount of money if you'll come and work at Starling House, if you'll help clean the house up, because it's just me here and it's too much for me. So of course, A, Opal needs the money, and B, she's been having these dreams, so of course she's gonna go and check out this house, right? And she could tell right away that this is not a normal house and there's something going on here. So that's kind of like part one of the story. Now, as soon as she starts working at Opal House, there is a woman that accosts her in the street. So she's picked up this woman who claims to be a corporate consultant. And again, this woman offers her an exorbitant amount of money to basically spy in Starling House. And while she's there cleaning, working for Arthur, she's supposed to take all these pictures and uncover all this information for this corporate consultant. And let me just say, this consultant is one of the best villains I feel like I've seen in a book in such a long time. Because this is a fantasy book, and this is a gothic-y, haunted house type book, and we have this very human character. There's nothing supernatural about her. She's just a corporate businesswoman human, but she is so evil and so awful that, she is the type of villain that, you really despise because she's just such an awful person. But I feel like that just makes a really great villain. A really great villain. So, other than a great villain, I don't know, there's so many things I love about this book. First, I just like Opal in general. Again, I feel like a lot of fantasy female characters, especially in YA, and this is not considered YA, it's considered adult, but in YA female, a lot of them are very similar. They're, go-getters, or they're, manic pixie dream girls, but they're always kind and smart and all these things, and Opal really isn't any of those things. She's not particularly kind, other than to her brother and the people she loves, and she's not particularly smart either. She's a damaged bird. She is so damaged and traumatized from her upbringing, from all the things that have happened in her life, but I think that makes her kind of relatable. We all have things that we struggle with, so seeing her struggle so much throughout the book, I think is really relatable. And then we have the actual house, and the house is its own character in this book, but I feel like describing the house as a haunted house is not the right word to use, but I don't know what the right word is, because normally when you say haunted house, you think of evil, and you think of ghosts, and you think of the house trying to kill you, but that's not what's happening here. Once Opal starts spending time at the house and cleaning it up, the book basically suggests that the house likes having Opal there. The house likes looking fab, so it helps Opal do certain things. I'm trying to be as vague as possible, but so to me that's not a haunted house, it's more like a magic house. I guess that's more how I would describe it. It's a gothic book, but with a magic house. Hopefully that makes sense. There's also a great cast of side characters. Well, maybe I shouldn't say great cast. There's some particular side characters that I think are really fantastic. So one of them in particular was this one woman, Beverly, and she is the owner of the motel that Opal and her brother live at. And through most of the book, Beverly is just this old, cigarette smoking, white trash, hick lady. But as the story goes on, there is so much more to her, and her and Opal clash a lot, but Beverly really comes through in the end, and I ended up really liking her. So long story short with this one, I really liked the characters. I connected with the heroes of the story. I really loved the villains. I loved the world building. I loved the magic house, and that they live in this small town that's kind of overseen by this big, evil family, but that family's also a corporation. And then I just love the plot. I love Opal's experiences working at the house, how she learns more about the house and what's really going on with the house. And then on the flip side, she's also battling this corporate consultant who works for a family that may or may not want the house and might want the land that the house is on, and there's secrets being uncovered, so there's like a mystery element. And yeah, all of that just worked for me, and I really ended up liking this one. So I think this was actually the second adult fantasy that I got from Alix, and yeah, I'm really glad I did because I really enjoyed it. So that is it for me today on Ballad and Dagger and Starling House. So now I want to know from you, have you read either of these? If you did, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish stuff coming your way soon. All right, everyone, happy reading.